So depletion of natural resources. In AC 102, the calculations for this were extraordinarily simple, okay? It was basically a units of activity method, done. Get into a lot more complications here. First of all, depletion, on an exam you cannot go DEP because I have to know the difference between depreciation and depletion. Depreciation is your plant assets, depletion is for your natural resources. So natural resource they call wasting assets, which sounds a little bit depressing, but these are assets that get used up as they are extracted or mined. So things like oil, gas, timber, various minerals, they're completely consumed as the whatever they are removed and sold. And they're different from plant assets in that they are replaceable only by an act of nature. Okay, so the calculation of depletion is similar to depreciation. You have your depletion base, which is the cost minus the residual value. So where I grew up, there was a gravel pit out back, and they spent my entire childhood, you know, removing all the gravel from the operations, and when it was done, you're left with a big, you know, blank hole in the ground. And the residual value, after all of the gravel was removed, well, they sold it for a subdivision, and they put a thin layer of loam over the whole thing, and there's a bunch of nice houses out there. It's much less dusty than it used to be. But the residual value, it's similar to your salvage value. It's what you can dispose of the land, or you know, whatever it is after the minerals have been extracted, the trees have been removed. So that's your residual value. Okay, what else do we need to know here? Okay, so with the property, plant, and equipment, we included the costs to acquire it, plus get it ready for its intended use. Similar principle here, except it's a little more, I don't know, more so. So you have your acquisition costs. You buy the land, or sometimes it would be leased land, but we don't really get into that here. So say they buy the land that's on, that would include all the closing costs and all of the various other things that land would normally involve. But then with these, you have your exploration costs, and those go to part of the depletion base. So you have to find the resources. Where's the oil? Where are the minerals? Trees, they're not so hard to find. So these you charge to the resource only if you find something. So you buy a parcel of land, you do all this research to find minerals, there's none there. Well, you can't capitalize that. So if you find them, though, then it can get capitalized to the cost of the land. All right, so exploration costs in general, large companies are going to expense them anyway, and small companies are going to capitalize them if they result in something positive. Okay, so now you get, that's your exploration costs. Then you have your development costs. You know, minerals don't just come jumping out of the ground. Trees don't, you know, just fall over for you. So you've got two different types of development costs. The tangible ones, this would be like the heavy equipment that you can move from one project to another. And those costs are not included in the depletion base. These are treated like equipment, and they're depreciated over the useful life of the operation that's going on. So if you think of a mining operation, there may be some, you know, heavy trucks or heavy other equipment that goes from one job, one site to another. Those would be depreciated. The intangible development costs, this is where you're drilling for oil, your drilling costs, your tunnels for a mine, wells, roads, these are included in the depletion base. You see, this is a little more complex than you get into in 102. Okay, so we get the, you know, the acquisition costs, you've got development costs, you have to separate the tangible from the intangible, then you get the restoration costs. And these are included in the depletion base. So it's the estimated fair value to restore the property to how it was after all of your work is done. So with a mining operation where they blow off the top of the mountain, supposedly the restoration cost would be to put the mountaintop back. Yeah. Okay. So the total cost of the land These are the costs incurred before the normal activities can start. Then you start your activities. Okay. Then, so you do your activities, now you're extracting stuff, you're mining for ore, you're drilling for oil, your oil's starting to come out, your trees are starting to get, hauled away. So now you have to figure out the depletion. Okay, so how do we do this? Usually it's going to be a units of activity, units of production. It'll involve the units that come out of whatever you're doing. So now you have to estimate the useful life, right? So remember when we did property, plant, and equipment, you'd estimate total machine hours or total units that will produce or total years of life. Well here, how do you know how much minerals are in the ground? How do you know how many trees are in the forest to do this equation, to do these, estimate? So you have to figure out the life in terms of units, and it's hard to estimate if it's all underground. So an accountant does not do this. You call your friend, the geologist, the mining engineer, to estimate it. And there are, I think they tell you about some of the Shell oil estimates in the book that might add a little bit to this. Okay, so you have to estimate the recoverable assets. Liquidating dividends. Okay, yeah, just read over the part on liquidating dividends. If a company owns one property and they gradually distribute it to the stockholders, that's called a liquidating dividend. Okay. So your percentage depletion, this is what's called the statutory depletion. It's repealed for most companies, but it can be used for tax purposes for oil, gas, and minerals, and that's where you have a percentage. And we really do not get into this at all, okay? But you should just be aware of it. Okay, so this is basically just sort of an introduction to the depletion, and I think I'd like to, we'll just do a mining example and maybe an oil and gas example separately, just so you get the feel of what's really going on here.